We went to speak to the Trump Bitcoin team. The United States is going to have a strategic Bitcoin reserve soon. I am 95% certain the world has really, really dramatically changed. It is like a renaissance there in DC. It's extraordinary. The Democrats were essentially the biggest cantillionaires of all. Bitcoin threatened their proof of stake lifestyle. AI will really help in a similar way to what Bitcoin did, is just liberate the individual. Like Singapore is to Asia, El Salvador is to the Americas. Everybody is talking about what we have passed. And this extraordinary moment in history is led by a 1 in 500 year sort of leader. A renaissance could happen for the first country to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. You need those renegades. When you hold Bitcoin in your own cold wallet, you're so powerful. You are that pioneer. Archie.
Stacy Herbert, this is your second time on the Bitcoin Archive podcast. Welcome back. It's so nice to have you.
But this time I'm on my own. Last time I was accompanied by my husband, Mr. Stacy Herbert.
Oh, yes, as he's widely known, proudly so.
Yes, actually, when we travel, I usually book our hotels and stuff. So it'll be under my name and people will always say Mr. Herbert. So it's always a joke with us.
Nice. You've been really busy. It seems like you've got your hand on so many different projects in El Salvador since you guys have moved over there, and it's not slowing down at all. If anything, it's accelerating. Now, tell us about that. Well, let's talk about the AI stuff that you've recently been involved in. We can get into the Bitcoin stuff immediately after that, because inevitably it will lead to that as well. So, what's been happening on the AI front? Because we know that's an incredibly hot sector worldwide, but a lot of people may not know that actually El Salvador is knee-deep in AI investments, development, and the like.
El Salvador is a trailblazer in AI, remarkably, right? Because you think of AI as an exponential technology, exponential innovation is happening. Well, El Salvador, we managed to become a trailblazer and a pioneer within such a sector, right? This is through our AI law and our AI regulations. The AI law was passed back in February. We followed up with a robot law in, I think, May. And then our regulations to the AI law passed into effect in late August, early September. So it's very, very new, but it is actually the only hard-coded AI framework in the world. And the thing is that we had this opportunity to create the benchmark for pro-innovation and excellence in AI frameworks, right? Because at the moment, what you see globally is most countries are waiting for the two big leaders, either the United States or EU, to act first. And the United States, you know how that system works. We have 50 states and they have a lot of power and they want to exert their authority and create a framework for their own states. Donald Trump tried to basically ban states from passing any regulatory frameworks because some of them were quite EU in their approach. They were banning, they were fining, they were restricting innovation. And so that got ripped out of the big, beautiful bill that he passed just recently. That was an attempt to make it to ban states from passing any regulations, and he was going to try to pass a federal regulation for AI in order to capture this moment in history, right? To become world leaders in AI, which the US is even without a framework. But the EU is racing towards a framework whereby everything will be banned, restricted, fined, very anti-innovation, very fear-driven, fear of the future, as always. So I thought this is a perfect opportunity for us to, present ourselves to the world with a different benchmark, a different pro-innovation, very, ready for this moment. Let's pioneer, let's seize this opportunity where so many of the best the minds in the world are just converging not only on Bitcoin, but on AI, right? There, even AI and Bitcoin are converging because the best and brightest are attracted to Bitcoin, but they're also attracted to AI. And we see Bitcoin miners, for example, competing with AI data centers for energy. So there's a natural convergence in these two sectors anyway. So it was perfect opportunity to fit in within the framework of President Bukele's, policy of economic liberty, and also establishing El Salvador as a tech hub.
Looking for a secure, trusted way to buy, sell, and hold Bitcoin? Gemini has been leading the way since 2014. Founded by the Winklevoss twins to be a security-first, fully regulated Bitcoin platform. With Gemini, your Bitcoin is protected with enterprise-grade security, backed by insurance and Type 2 certifications for SOC 1 and SOC 2. Whether you're new to Bitcoin or a long-time hodler, Gemini gives you the tools to stack sats and build generational wealth your way. From simple one-tap buys to advanced charts and trading features, it's all here. Buy, sell, and hold securely. That's Gemini. Gemini. Bitcoin with confidence. Need cash without selling your Bitcoin? With DeBiFi, you borrow against your Bitcoin, non-custodial, multi-sig escrow, and you keep your keys. No banks, no selling. Just institutional grade liquidity with terms up to 2 years and APRs as low as 9%. All transactions are signed using private keys on your own device. Using a 3 of 4 multi-sig setup, 3 out of 4 keys must approve every transaction, giving you control, transparency, and peace of mind. Whether you're a hodler, miner, small business, or treasury team, DeBiFi gives you the cash you need now without giving up your Bitcoin upside or triggering a taxable event. Get liquidity, keep exposure, and stay secure. That's DeBiFi. DeBiFi, your Bitcoin, your money. You mentioned the artificial intelligence and robotics laws setting up a framework that's leading edge in the world and establishing the benchmark. But what in particular about these frameworks are industry members finding particularly attractive about working in El Salvador?
So right now there's a lot of there just kind of like when we established the Bitcoin law and then the digital assets law, there was no regulatory clarity, right? Like who owns what is a big issue. So El Salvador established a clear safe harbor for builders because we want to attract builders, right? We're building the new El Salvador, and if you're building a new country, like you need builders, right? So we established a framework for builders and innovators to try out these new ideas because the innovation is happening so exponentially. You need the clarity, right? Because if somebody is going to end up fining you billions of dollars, like the EU is threatening on certain, products or developments or models, then it's going to hinder the progress of, where this is going to take us, what this technology can offer. I think AI will really help in a similar way to what Bitcoin did, is just liberate the individual at a very individual level that you can genuinely, it's beyond just a library. You know what I mean? It's like the world history and the world knowledge and the world talent really at your fingertips that you can, there's really no limit anymore to what you as an individual can do. And right now at this moment in history, and there will be attempts to prevent that, just like with the printing press, hundreds of years ago, they tried to stop that. The Vatican tried to stop that. Well, I think the EU is going to be the equivalent. They're going to try to stop the individual from being free. And El Salvador stands for freedom. We stand for economic liberty, and we stand for the individual. So that's where we fit into the global, paradigm at the moment.
So what sort of interest has El Salvador been able to attract as a result of that? And we're talking from, anywhere from investors to industry operators. Are you able to at least give us a hint about that?
Well, I could say it's pretty much every single AI company worth more than $1 trillion because those ones are operating globally. Um, Yeah, very, very senior global technologists and tech companies, governments. Everybody is talking about what we have passed because it is, I know, for example, it is being, there's it's rippling throughout Latin America. Okay, because Latin America we're the first with an AI framework like this, and pretty much Latin America has been waiting for the EU. Everybody's drafting a regulatory framework, but waiting for either the EU or US to first establish one. And so most of the EU, most of Latin America has been building a framework or drafting a framework around what the EU is doing. With the passage of our law and our framework, I know for a fact, because I've heard through some of these multi-trillion-dollar companies, that in their discussions with these countries, that they are now referencing what El Salvador has done, and that this is perhaps an alternative to what the EU is proposing. Especially, I think that what El Salvador is becoming is like Singapore is to Asia, El Salvador is to the Americas, in that we are on the same time zone. We're a small, nimble country with economic liberty at our heart, so of our policy. So we could move fast, and that's needed in this day and age of exponential innovation. And we can lead boldly. Like President Bukele has a vision unlike any other in the world, any other leader in the world, and certainly in Latin America. So, where President Bukele always says where El Salvador is going is to the place we want to be. And it turns out that a lot of other countries also want to be where we want to be.
And what sort of projects? I guess, the thing that's really important to AI, energy is really important. Land to be able to build data centers and the permission to be able to do that. Presumably, the framework allows for both of those things. I don't know too much about El Salvador's energy situation apart from, mining Bitcoin with volcano generated energy. Is that a source that can scale alongside the requirements of AI, or are there other energy sources available for El Salvador to draw upon?
We are, we're developing energy capacity rapidly. Before President Bukele, there was no reason to, because El Salvador was essentially a failed state, and it was the most dangerous country in the world, even more so than Iraq and Afghanistan and other places at war. So in the old paradigm before AI, before Bitcoin, pretty much the world was run on manufacturing. A developing country would turn to manufacturing, and that would be a reason to develop energy capacity to, feed the energy needs for the factories. And of course, 15, 20 years ago, what company wanted to build a factory in El Salvador when it was so dangerous and the gangs occupied much of the country or parts of the country? And so now with a leader who has restored the order to the country, provided security, and has such a clear vision of El Salvador as a world leader. This is not an incremental policy that President Bukele has. He has a policy to leapfrog to the top. And he did, right? First, it started with Bitcoin as legal tender. Once he did that, the most important media in the world, which is the Wall Street press, the financial news, because financial news is global. It goes past any politics or gossip or cultural sort of, interest, and it leapfrogs like in the mindsets of the world, in the mind share of the world population. So everybody in the world knows what the dollar is trading at, or gold is trading at, or if the Dow Jones is up or down. We all know, because of course in 2008 and 2009 we all knew when the US markets collapsed, it affected the whole world, right? So when that media started covering President Bukele, like, we immediately became world leaders. We were we were top of the world stage in terms of the financial press covering what El Salvador is doing. And so we aim to be that now. And part of what we're doing is President Bukele obviously knows that energy is key to development. We need energy resources. Fortunately for El Salvador, is that the country has one of the highest per capita capacity for geothermal. So we are, developing 2 new geothermal fields, um, or and we're also like now part of we're developing SMRs, like the small nuclear reactors, the small modular reactors. So we have a vision to go big, like go big or go home, right? And that's what we're doing on that. So within the next 3 years, 2 of the geothermal plants will be online, and that will like significantly increase our energy capacity, and then the SMRs will be online in another 2 years. So our capacity is growing, but what we lead in is the vision. And right now, like what we lead in right now today is the vision. We've become like a test bed for innovation, because innovation is the most important thing right now. I think in the US markets, and they're kind of focused on that energy, those huge, massive data centers. But I think the way technology in the world always works is towards efficiency. So they're building, because there is like infinite capacity for land in the United States. I'm in the United States right now. There's almost infinite capital available as well. Everybody's deploying capital in the US. And so, they're building these massive energy data centers, like 1 gigawatt data centers. They're aiming for 10 gigawatt data centers for those LLMs, those large language models. But, I think the future is going to be more efficient, very fast, very soon, more modular, and the small language models are fit into that modular paradigm. So I think what we have right now is a vision and a leadership to pioneer this space in terms of being a test bed for innovation. And we are developing like volcano powered AI. We're opening an AI lab, a national AI lab, which will be the first in Latin America, with B300s, this latest new Blackwell chips from NVIDIA. They're the most cutting edge in the world. If you have been following AI at all, if you know anything about the industry, and I've been focused on writing our law for the last 2 years, so I've been very focused on the minutia of everything, and everybody has been waiting for these new Blackwell chips, and we've got the first quote. We're getting the first chips, the B300 chips delivered, the very first in the world. Like, how does a small country like El Salvador get that? But through leadership, because it's not like through the capital expense. So there are companies spending hundreds of billions of dollars, but they didn't get the first quote. They didn't get the first delivery. We did, because we have something that nobody else has, which is a leader and a vision and a great story.
So when you say El Salvador is going to get that leading edge chip, does that mean an NVIDIA data center in El Salvador, or is the government actually going to operate a data center? Who is going to get those chips?
Yeah, the government will operate the data center. NVIDIA doesn't operate data centers. They make chips, and so we're doing that ourselves. There will be some. It'll be public-private. We'll be announcing some sponsors and partnerships on that. But yeah, it's a national AI lab, so it's a part of the data center will be allocated to the national AI lab, and this will be the first in Latin America with these most advanced chips. So we immediately go to the top.
I mean, AI is obviously a cutting edge industry. How do we make sure that people in El Salvador reap the benefits of something like this and are ready to, develop the skills necessary to fill the demand for jobs rather than just having to import all those skills. What's happening on the education front in that regard?
Yes, we could be a net exporter of AI services, right? Rather than the hardware or the data centers. Like we can develop the skill set within the country to export as a service. We are the first country in the world. Again, like El Salvador is the pioneer on so many things that that's why people know our name, right? We're world leaders. People know our name because we have such a clear vision. Hey, I just had a meeting in Washington, D.C. with one of these multi-trillion dollar companies, and they said something extraordinary, which is that of all the delegations from all of the countries they meet, and they meet delegations from many, many, many countries, and they said El Salvador was number one in the clarity of the vision for the country that they had, you know, conveyed to them, right? That we had the clearest vision for where we were going. And this is like a giant company meeting all sorts of nations. And the ambassador Mayorga and I looked at each other. We were in this meeting. We were like, we have the clearest vision. Wow, that's like, because of course I don't know what other countries are saying or in these sort of meetings, but apparently like our vision is the clearest and the most inspiring. So yeah, what was the rest of the question?
The question was basically, is there an education program to make sure that students and the kids in El Salvador grow up and become educated to offer, to take up the jobs that will be required of this industry? So
Well,
is El Salvador training the next generation to fill these jobs?
yes, we are. And as I was saying, we are the first in the world with an AI education program for children as young as 6. Other countries are talking about it, like China, like the United States, but El Salvador is the first to actually deploy it. We've been piloting since January a program for children as young as 6. So it's a program we've developed with Kathy Wood's ARC Educate. Now, Kathy Wood, everybody knows, is a Wall Street investor. She's a very famous Wall Street investor, especially in AI and technology. She was an early investor in NVIDIA, early investor in Tesla, SpaceX, XAI, all of these sort of, cutting edge, best companies in the AI sector. And she has this program to teach AI and robotics, but not just like the technical details and stuff like that, but how to innovate, how to think, how to remain human, how to be sovereign, like how to be a sovereign individual within this coming new reality. Like there's a huge transformation that's going to happen in this world, driven by AI and physical AI. The robots are coming, whether it is the robo taxis or the robo servants or the robo factory workers. Um, how how to how to be extraordinary within that, like how to remain human and successful and still innovate and think and build, how to be a builder within that uh, that global reality that's coming. And it's an amazing program. It's Arc Educate. So how it goes is like first grade you learn AI and how to innovate within AI. Then second grade is robotics, and then you go back in third grade to AI, and then fourth grade to robotics, fifth grade back to AI, sixth grade to robotics, all the way up until your 12th grade. So this way of thinking, and it's kind of like based on that Montessori sort of method where the students lead and the students are encouraged to fail, to like dream big, to not be embarrassed of their ideas, to try new things, to build. Like, so our first pilot program, we've been teaching 2,000 students in 50 schools, and they graduate October 25th, for example. And there's like 25 of the students which will present to the public their inventions. So they've all had to come up with an invention, these teams. So there's 25 inventions from these kids as young as 6 or 7 that they've invented something and they're going to present to the public. Now think of how that sort of mindset shift. President Bukele said September 15, 2023, which was Independence Day. That year, he often addresses the nation on Independence Day. And he said, hey, I've delivered this peace and security, and we have a blank slate to build a new El Salvador. The people, Salvadorans, you need to move from the back of the class, where we have been for the last 40 years with all those failed governments before me. Like, it's time for you to move to the front of the class, or even teach the class, right? Like, you need to, like, you're leaders now. President Bukele made El Salvador a world stage leader. Like, we're leaders on the world stage. So the population needs to understand that in a way that, I grew up in America, so I'm used, like, we're brought up like we're number one, we're the rulers of the world, like, and everybody in America has that attitude, and that's why it's such an amazing place to build, right? Because unlike Europe, where in Europe everybody's so afraid to fail, where in America nobody's afraid to fail. Everybody's like, yeehaw, I just failed big time, man. My company went bust. And it's like, time to start. But now I know how to do the next one, right? That's an attitude that we have in America that, is needed to be a country that innovates and leads and builds. And that's what we're building in El Salvador. That's what we're creating, that sort of individual that is ready to lead, because the spotlight is on us in El Salvador, and the world is happy for us to lead. They're mesmerized by El Salvador and the story of its transformation.
You mentioned that you were in DC, and coincidentally there was a conference there, BTC in DC. Was that concurrent with some kind of AI summit as well, or was that coincident with just the interested parties you were meeting as well?
It was just a coincidence. I agreed to speak. Max and I agreed to speak at the BTC in DC conference. And of course, immediately, all the AI companies reached out, and I had meeting after meeting after meeting. So in fact, I only ever went to the BTC in DC conference for about half an hour. And it was interesting because, wow, the world has really, really dramatically changed. And the night of the election of Donald Trump, re-election of Donald Trump, President Bukele tweeted something along the lines of, "This is a fork in the path of humanity," or something. That's a huge shift in the path that humanity was taking. Like, had we continued down the Biden path or the Kamala path, things would be different right now. And I can tell you that, being in Bitcoin since 2010, working for the government of El Salvador for the past 4 years, hello, I had never been to DC in all that time for any reason for Bitcoin. I had been there for some AI meetings in the past year, but or the last year of the Biden administration. But it is like the center. It is like a renaissance there in DC. It's extraordinary. You should go see it, because there is so much Bitcoin happening there. There's like PubKey is opening there. There are all these Bitcoiners there, from like early Bitcoiners, OG Bitcoiners, who are more cypherpunk, and it's been transformed there.
So what are they doing there? Is it because Bitcoiners are going with such frequency to visit policymakers, or are they living in DC and there's a whole Bitcoin scene emerging? What's going on there?
Both. I really think so, because there are so many Bitcoiners in the government, right? You have like Senator Warren Davidson, or is it Congressman? Like Warren Davidson's there. Like there are all these Bitcoiners in government, in the Trump administration, like Patrick Witt, you have as the executive director of the president's Council of Crypto. He's a Bitcoiner. So you have Bitcoiners now working in government. Under the Democrats, there obviously were not, and they were very hostile to Bitcoin. Now it's very friendly to Bitcoin, very welcoming. And also because the politicization of AI under Biden had driven a lot of the AI companies to start to establish headquarters in DC, because under Biden, they were kind of going down the EU sort of route of restricting and export bans, and they called it the AI diffusion rule, right? Biden had announced it through executive order, but it never came into effect because President Trump had didn't implement it, which it should have been like May 15th of this year, but Trump uh, decided not to implement it, which that would have been like it would have just ended this global exponential innovation happening in AI, because basically the AI diffusion rule would have created these tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 countries. Tier 1 is the only place that NVIDIA would have been able to export their chips. And pretty much like 90% of the global infrastructure, the hardware of AI is on NVIDIA chips. So they would have, the Biden AI diffusion rule would have banned any country but the tier 1 ones from receiving them without all sorts of export restrictions. And so the tier 1 countries were essentially just Five Eyes and one or two others. And all of Latin America would have been tier 2. So it would have been like a more bureaucracy and burden to receive any of the most advanced chips. So you would have had like the chips that are a year or two old. And then even then you would have had a lot of paperwork and hassle of getting them, and then a whole bunch of tier 3. So that was never implemented, thank God, by Donald Trump, because it would have destroyed the U.S. advantage. There's it would have been the equivalent of when the U.S. had seized the treasuries from Russia. It's like, why turn the world away from this this exorbitant privilege you have to print US dollars? And the same with the chips, the AI diffusion rule that nearly came in, is like, you are the world leaders in this amazing technology that is transforming the world so rapidly in such an amazing way, and you want to like prevent your company from, your leading company in NVIDIA, from spreading their technology, and through the technology, the American mindset, right, of building amazing things, like building hope and a future and liberty and all the concepts of America. Instead, they opened the door for China to, sell, to want to compete, to have a reason to start to build their own technology, because China was totally dependent on NVIDIA, right? Totally. And then now Biden had opened the door for China to compete in
In
and,
chips.
in chips, in a sector that the U.S. had a total monopoly, but like a monopoly based on just excellence, because the way the NVIDIA chips are architected is like nobody can compete with it, just because it's so brilliant. It's like, making the perfect bridge, and like once all the bridges before that perfect bridge happened just fell, but now like you design and architect a perfect bridge, and the world advances rapidly because now we could build bridges because we figured out how to do it. That's kind of like what NVIDIA had done with their the CUDA, architecture of their chips. So like nobody could compete with that unless they weren't allowed to compete. Like Biden was like, no, we don't want the US to compete. We don't want our excellence to be exported. So, and I think you saw that like with the DeepSeek moment in January, which is they were able to, okay, we're not going to be able to build on the best. So let's figure out how to build something on second best. And so you encouraged them, President Biden had, to figure a way around just building on excellence. And I think it was a real wake-up call.
Yeah, in a short space of time that the United States banned the most advanced chips being exported to China. China spun up its own industry and has pretty much caught up for all intents and purposes, and is expected to be neck and neck with the most advanced chips that the American companies can design and manufacture. So that's been a bit of a kick in the pants, really. And I don't really know why American policy hasn't shifted to recognize that it's no longer as simple as dishing out punitive sanctions in the hope of gaining compliance from a country like China. China is a legitimate global power capable of innovating on its own. I think the stereotype of China only being able to steal and copy, sure, they may do that, but it sort of belies the fact that they're also incredibly innovative. Every other week, there's some groundbreaking research coming out of a Chinese university. And I feel like while we're hearing about that more often, policymakers have not adjusted to that reality.
Yeah. And it's that's like thousands of year old, philosophy is never underestimate your enemy. They're not enemies, but competitors, right? They never underestimate them. You should overestimate them, if anything, and just like try your hardest to compete as if they're better than you always, so that you're always ahead, right? You're always pushing yourself to be maximum, like extraordinary. Like everything must be the best. Otherwise, you're going to get left behind. And I think the thing about the US, though, is it's a magnet for the best and brightest. So we have the Elon Musks of the world, right? Like they're building in the United States. So despite what the Democrats might have done to thwart just these amazing innovations happening, it still happened because I guess of that system, what Elon Musk picked up and moved out of California, where they literally tweeted at him that they didn't want him there. So he's like, okay, and moved to Texas.
That was the famous "fuck Elon Musk" tweet, to which he replied, "message received" or something to that effect.
Yes, message received, received. And that's a good thing about the United States in terms of being, the benefit of that sort of federal system where states have a lot of power. And I think it is not so good at the moment when you do need an AI policy framework it does slow it down. But at that moment, it was perfect for Elon Musk to move to Texas and continue to innovate and continue to build. And if that were not available to him, he might have had to move to, who knows, the UAE or something, like to have that sort of capital and land and space that he needed to build what he was building. So thank God for Texas at that time, and thank God for that system that we have in the United States where you could just pick up and move to another state.
You mentioned a change in atmosphere in DC regarding AI, but also in particular Bitcoin. And one of the things that's puzzled me for the longest time is the Democrats seem to want to pick a fight with an industry that had no problem with the Democrats. And it never made any sense to me because, one answer might be, well, their Wall Street sponsors wanted to suppress the industry. But, there were parts of Wall Street that were also incredibly bullish on Bitcoin and the crypto industry in general. So I'm wondering if, in your experience since then, have you been able to glean What was motivating all of that? Like choke point 2.0, all the adversarial legislation that was coming in. Why did they pick a fight with Bitcoin?
Well, because the two major power centers of Democrats, right, are California and New York. So New York is Wall Street, um, and I think Wall Street fought Bitcoin at first, and Wall Street is also where New York City is, the center of media, and all of the lovies are equivalent of the lovies live in New York and California, and they want to rule and control the culture. I mean, President Putin just said at Valdai, right, this conference in Russia about this liberal world order that we've seen starting to unravel around the world was like this global order of freaks and weirdos running the world, and they wanted everybody to lose and only they could win. And that was kind of their policy, right? Because the Democrats were essentially the biggest cantillionaires of all. The Republicans were more industrialist, builders, manufacturers, conservative in terms of economic liberty and, allowing freedom to build. Whereas the Democrats, through their control of New York, had essentially become cantillionaires, and then incentives matter, right? You don't change Bitcoin, Bitcoin changes you, because it's all about the incentives. Incentives change you. And they were suddenly the cantillionaires. And, I've known some cantillionaires, and the thing is, all humans have to, in that proof of stake mindset, they genuinely have to convince themselves that it's proof of work, like that they somehow deserve, like they're worth $1 billion, not because they're sitting next to the New York Fed, the money printer. It's because they're so extraordinary. They're just an amazing human being with amazing ideas, and that they love, transgenderism and stuff like that. That sort of woke mindset is why they're cantillionaires, is why they're worth all this free money. That this is this justifies their net worth just from being the proximity to the not only the money printer but the camera lens, right? Everything had to run through a New York, you know, uh, media outlet, so they had the first access to the camera and to the printer. And that's how they controlled the world, through New York, right? New York is the center of, as I said at the top of this interview, New York is the center of the most powerful media, news outlets. Hollywood is a different thing that's more like, movies, maybe some quite propagandistic, but it's this daily, like, shaping the narrative, explaining what happened or leaving out what happened, and reframing everything that happened in the day through your lens of what actually happened. And this is social media. Elon Musk has kind of blown that whole thing apart, of course, with being able to tell the truth without the gatekeepers, the woke gatekeepers of New York, the Democrats. And I think that was their reaction, is like, Bitcoin threatened their proof of stake lifestyle, right? They had a cushy proof of stake lifestyle, and it made them like aristocrats, where they got to determine what happened in the world. They got to choose who got elected. They got to choose how to frame the events, the history being made every day. So I think that's what they were reacting against, because they were in control of New York. Perhaps if the Republicans had been in control of New York, they might have been the ones resisting Bitcoin, but it was the Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the situation from afar, it felt like over the years, as the Democrats won over Wall Street, Silicon Valley, and Hollywood, that they were more than ready to abandon, or more than willing to abandon, the working class as a result of, and all the industries that supported working class jobs as well. Culminating in the ridiculous deplorables line by someone who's supposed to be of the party of the working class by Hillary Clinton was just probably that was the
That
peak.
was the moment,
Yeah,
like
that was just, what are these people saying? Like, how can you call them deplorables?
a basket of deplorables. And
Yeah.
that was the moment that and when she engaged with a meme, Pepe the Frog, and started calling it like a Nazi. And you're like, wow, like these were the moments that she lost. She lost on her own, and then she made the world pay for it, right? She didn't pay for it. She
No, it was
refused.
always someone else's fault.
It was her, somebody else. That's a proof of stake mindset, right? She was the entitled person. She deserved all of this stuff. This is what I was telling you about. They convince themselves that they deserve the money printer. They deserve to force everybody else to
Mm-hmm.
abide by the rules, the random rules, the capricious rules that they set for the world. And if they don't, then they're Nazis or they're racists or they're a basket of deplorables. And then she she really took the like her alone, she alone took the world down a path of darkness. These dark ages that we're emerging from, and El Salvador is one of the leaders leading us out of this. She took us down a very dark path with that whole Russiagate stuff and the witch hunts and the deplatforming and almost the social credit scores, and just the hostility to 50% of Americans, right? That they became like the victims of her husband's policies, like NAFTA and China into the WTO without any plan, and the total deindustrialization of the Midwest, like to destroy, to take people's livelihoods, to wipe out their hope for their future. Wow, like that's like Mao level sort of just horror inflicted upon millions of people just without any regard. Like they're doing it from New York, sitting next to a money printer, and just like without knowing these people, without caring about them, they just deindustrialized Ohio, Iowa, like the Pennsylvania. They just wiped out people's hope for the future, and then condemned them as Nazis and racists and deplorables. Wow, I mean, that was just the peak of the dark ages, the fiat dark ages, the proof of stake mindset. And I'm glad it's over. And once you adopt Bitcoin, and I believe the United States is going to have a strategic Bitcoin reserve soon, and I believe they're going to begin accumulating Bitcoin to that strategic reserve. So you don't change Bitcoin, Bitcoin changes you. And I think it's going to set America on a path that even the likes of Hillary Clinton cannot take us off, because the people will see, once they're on this path of economic liberty and where the individual is once again sovereign, they're not going to let the money printers of New York City do again to them what they went through over the past 30, 40 years.
It's interesting that you just said that, Stacy, because there's been a lot of consternation on the timeline about the belated enactment of all the election promises with respect to a Bitcoin strategic reserve in the United States, and your confidence levels of that actually coming to fruition. How would
Yeah.
you rate them?
I am 95% certain. And the 5% is just because you never know how the Democrats might try to sabotage something. But the energy, the momentum, it's hard to overcome that momentum, not only in in DC itself, in the political class, but in the population. I think there's too much optimism and too much hope and too much like desiring the return of the United States as a builder nation. I think that and because there's a midterms coming up soon, I don't think the House, the Democrats in the House or the Senate are going to resist that. They feel it. They know that their electoral chances count on them backing this. So at the end of the day, I believe it's as close to 100% as is possible for the United States to announce soon and to actually implement soon the United States Strategic Bitcoin Reserve. So it'll be fun because right now, El Salvador is the only one accumulating every day, and we post that all the time from the Bitcoin office Twitter handle, another Bitcoin stacked, another Bitcoin bought. So pretty soon we'll have maybe it coming from the United States as well, a similar sort of daily announcement. I wonder, I kind of feel like they're not going to do DCA like we do, but they'll do more lump sums and stuff like that.
Now, we know it was announced that Mr. Stacy Herbert is going over to speak to someone very important in Washington. Has that happened yet?
No, we went to speak to the Trump Bitcoin team. And you know what? I want to say what I did mention, we were at the BTC in DC conference. And this is going to lead into the announcement of our Bitcoin Historico conference in Centro Historico, downtown San Salvador, is that it was a 2-day affair in DC. I believe it was Michael Saylor who opened the event. People like Jack Mallers were on stage and others, big names, Adam Back. But the panel on El Salvador, in which Max and I spoke, and Ambassador Milena Mayorga, and the moderator was Tomer Stroblight. And it was the only session of the entire 2-day event that had a standing ovation. And that shows you just that I am right when I tweet all the time, El Salvador is winning. We are winning in many, many ways. We are winning not only with our peace that we have achieved and the economic miracle now set in motion, but we are winning, most importantly, hearts and minds, right? We are winning the narrative. And that is so important to the transformation required to build a new El Salvador, right? You need builders to come build. You need pioneers to come build. You need innovators. You need dreamers. You need builders, all this stuff, right? So you need a story. You need an emotional connection to, like, how did the United States become such an extraordinary country? How did it appeal to, how did all the best and brightest of Europe like set sail on a ship hundreds of years ago and then like head west, right? How did they like go through that really difficult journey? It wasn't easy to get to California, right? A couple hundred years ago. We had an amazing story, right? Like anybody could come build something extraordinary in America. It was just down to you. If you have the ability, if you have a skill, if you have the desire, the dream, you could do it. And that's the sort of feeling that we inspire in the builders and innovators and dreamers of today. And I think we're seeing them come to El Salvador and be part of history.
Tell us about Historico. What is that? When is it? And why are you holding it? What are you expecting to get done there? And why should people come and attend?
Bitcoin Historico is not just a conference. It is a testament, as I say all the time, to an extraordinary moment in history. And this extraordinary moment in history is led by a 1 in 500 year sort of leader in President Bukele. Now, Max and I had long ago, before El Salvador had even adopted Bitcoin as legal tender, realized that a renaissance could happen, a Florence-like situation could happen for the first country to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. Because I believe, looking at the history, that Florence became florins because of two things: the florin, which was the most perfect money of its time. Gold had been money for 1,000, 2,000 years by that point, but the Bank of Medici had essentially like created a perfect unit of that Bitcoin, of that gold, that digital, that analog Bitcoin, right? That they had created the perfect trusted, that was immediately trusted by merchants around the world to take that gold florin first. So Florence attracted the best and brightest of its time. It wasn't just Da Vinci and Michelangelo and Botticelli. It was the architects, it was the accountants, it was the age of discovery. That was at the same time. It was the age of discovery, looking out to the stars, just like Elon's looking out to Mars, right? We're still looking out to the stars. This is another time of looking out to the stars, like that we're one with this universe, like we're leaders of this universe, not just like this little city. Like this is like we could do we could we could get to the stars, and that's where it began, right? We could imagine those stars, and we can get to the stars, and we could dream big. And I think Bitcoin Historico is kind of a reaction to kind of how I feel like that, like with Bitcoin. So Max and I spoke at the very first Bitcoin conference in Prague in 2011, November 2011. And Amir Taki ran that, right? And Amir Taki was he used to mine Bitcoin on his laptop. He was he submitted the first BIP, the first Bitcoin improvement. Um, and so the proposal, and at that first conference, he said exactly that. As soon as I said this about aiming for the stars, he actually said that at that conference in Prague. He said that Bitcoin would take us to the stars, that we would travel the universe because of Bitcoin. And now I just remembered that. But I wanted to return to that sort of OG Bitcoin conference experience of just talking about philosophical, like making it an age of discovery again. Right now, it's kind of very corporate and very suit coiner and very more about stock prices rather than individual sovereignty and economic liberty and these sort of enlightenment ideals, or the sort of age of discovery ideas. I wanted to return to that sort of conversation, which was so exhilarating to be there in those early days back in 2011 when we were talking about that. That was even so. Hal Finney, when he posted the in the very first weeks of Bitcoin about Bitcoin possibly being 10 million, it wasn't even as a number go up sort of technology, because there was no price on Bitcoin for another year after that. It was more about that. It was about these big picture ideas of traveling the universe, about an age of discovery, right? He was like talking about this realm of possibility, of hope, of dreaming, of innovation. That's where innovation comes from. It's like these visions of like how you, like, wow, people well, some people will laugh at Elon Musk for saying we're going to go to Mars and we're going to inhabit Mars, and they go on to MSNBC or the Democratic media and they say like this is a ridiculous idea, right? But it's in the dream that innovation happens. It's having a vision where you start to build towards that vision, and maybe you don't get there in the end, but something remarkable might happen on the way. It's only by doing, that notion of you could just do things.
Yeah. I mean, if Elon never civilizes Mars, in the process, he's built a globally available satellite internet. He's built spaceships that will probably allow a lot of people to, space tourism will be enabled by that, and mass space tourism, and probably some form of faster air travel as well from nation to nation, and a whole bunch of other innovations, just like the space race led to a bunch of innovations that we were all able to use in our day-to-day lives, something as simple as Velcro, for example. So, the vision, the broader vision, the higher vision can often lead to a whole bunch of other innovations along the way.
And you need those renegades. You
Hmm.
need those sort of people willing to be laughed at or even be attacked. And Elon has faced like a lot of threats, right? For his daring to contradict the status quo, because that was happening very much so back in the Renaissance days, right? The age of discovery, when you're looking out at the stars and saying, hey, wait, actually the earth is revolving around the sun. I mean, this is heresy, right? So you need heretics who will challenge the these sort of notions of like, no, the earth is revolving around the sun. We are not the center of the universe. Or today it's things like, no, it's just there's two genders. And it is excommunication that was faced for those sort of things. But it's not, I mean, that's just one, like, kind of, people are starting to laugh at that notion now, but it filtered out into everything, including finance, technology, that it started to impact when you're excommunicating people for thought crimes, which was happening as well back in the Renaissance, the age of discovery. Um, you you lose the best and the brightest. There've always been people monopolizing the power and the printing press. Eh, Back then, it was also knowledge, right? They were controlling knowledge and using that to enrich themselves, through indulgences and stuff like that. Back in 700, 800 years ago. So I think for me, I feel like it's a similar, the history never exactly repeats, but it does rhyme. And we're in a period of time right now that rhymes with those days of emerging from the dark ages through heresy, basically, thinking things that, and daring to say things and daring to believe in things or dream of things that the 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 power doesn't want you to have, a sort of reformation of of and reasserting that the individual sovereignty, that the individual is at the center of these things. And also in the Renaissance, of course, what happened, like right now at this moment in history, we've been taught even by the AI. Remember Gemini a few years ago, when if you ask them to present some images of emperors of Rome,
Oh yeah,
they were all black, right? Or women.
sure, yeah.
It's just like that. That's totalitarianism. That's a totalitarian mindset, right? To actually just like gaslight the population and rewrite history.
It was doing something similar. I was trying to generate sort of a triumphant gorilla image for a meme that I was making for Bitcoin when it hit 100,000. I would like create an image of a very masculine, triumphant gorilla, and it would just create the most woke nonsense. And I say, no, more masculine, and then it would double down on the error. And I'm like, what is going on? I think they fed it that masculine means something other than what most people would expect it to mean, and so it just kept doubling down on the most ridiculous expressions.
Well, that's the thing. That's the sort of moment in history we're at. That's very similar to, you know, what we're seeing right now in El Salvador, in the United States, with certain people willing to, you know, nail the 99 theses onto the church door, that you're willing to say things and possibly be, excommunicated or worse, burned at the stake, right? That you're willing to just like blow up these ideas that had like taken over in some, sort of crazy insanity that had swept Europe during the times of the Inquisition. And we've gone through an Inquisition, a dark ages, really, over the past decade, of obviously not the same gory sort of, burning people at the stake, or, you know, putting doing weird things to them in torture chambers.
So what do you make of the TikTok forced acquisition then, or forced disposition and acquisition by American interest? And do you think that's some kind of regression after the progress of Elon buying Twitter?
Well, I think the momentum is in the right direction, and there will always be dumb ideas going on. I think the creators of TikTok, obviously, they had a better technology, and our US social media companies were not able to compete with whatever. I I never went to TikTok, the same reason why I never took heroin, because I saw what it did to people, and I figured, like, why even try? And I don't want to sit on TikTok all day with an algorithm feeding me what I exactly like, soma, you know.
I've been told that by people who love using TikTok. They're like, don't use it. It's so good. It will addict you immediately. It knows exactly how to press on your triggers to make sure that you're just constantly consuming. The algorithm was that good, and I said, okay, thanks. I'll stay away from it.
Exactly. Anytime I've
Mm.
ever seen anything ever, or anybody ever say it's so addictive, I just don't do it, because I don't want to be addicted to anything. I just want to live life and continue to build. Bitcoin Historico is a return to the OG Bitcoin conferences, where it's an age of discovery and possibility and hope, and for real, like something, so, like, that history books will still talk about in 500 years, about that moment of these, like, I always think of that, like, of Florence. Like, how did all these people come together in one spot? It was a city of like 40,000 people. Like, how does it attract all of those people? This is that moment in Bitcoin. So I look around, and for me, I feel like it's so, you're making Bitcoin at the conferences today are so, it's like Bitcoin is so ordinary, right? But Bitcoin is extraordinary, and the transformation and the possibility is just limitless. It's like, we need to be more like Elon, right? Let's get to Mars. Like, it's not like, buy my stock, and my stock price, my MNAV might go up. It's like, oh my God, this is so boring. Like, is this all we're hoping for? Is this what we're aiming for? Like, there's so much more to be discovered, to be built, to imagine. Like, don't give up.
I agree. I think we've all been awaiting some kind of parabolic movement in Bitcoin, and it kind of hasn't happened in Bitcoin, but it's happened in these Bitcoin treasury companies. So as a result, it's just attracted so much of the attention on this cycle, which has kind of abated for now. But who knows whether or not that will pick up again once Bitcoin seems to be making another move right now.
But it's a fiat mindset, I believe.
Hmm.
Just like I said about the dark ages that we experienced, especially the Hillary Clinton dark ages, that, that was the incentives mattered to what the Democrats did, and that they were the cantillionaires, and that became a horror show for the rest of the world, because they wanted to maintain that power that they had over the printing press, and their cantillionaire status, and their control of the cultural reality. The same now is like, you don't want to shift your mindset onto something else that is out there, is it is beyond, outside the individual. So when you hold Bitcoin in your own hardware or your own cold wallet, that you're individually sovereign, you're so powerful. You are, even if you have like 10 satoshis, like, you are a Medici, right? Like, you control your fate. You are like the pioneer. You're the guy on the, in the wagon traveling into the unknown, right? When you give that power to some Wall Street custodian, you're not that pioneer. You're reading that pioneer's book, right? Or their, you know, diary of them doing extraordinary things. That's no age of discovery in my mind. And we'll see, there are many choices. There are many, many Bitcoin conferences. Most of them are very corporate. We're not even having many corporate sponsors. We're just, Stone Ridge Holdings is the lead sponsor, the Medici sponsor. And many will in Bitcoin will know Stone Ridge as, the parent company to NYDIG. So everybody knows them from, they were one of the earliest adopters on Wall Street of Bitcoin as a treasury strategy. They accumulated Bitcoin since it was like 2014, 2015. They were very early. Ross Stevens publishes an amazing newsletter, has said extraordinary things very early for a Wall Street, huge hedge fund. It's like a $40 billion hedge fund. So he gets it, and he's a Bitcoiner, and Stone Ridge is the Medici sponsor. We have Folger Ventures also as a DaVinci sponsor. So we're continuing with this age of discovery, age of beauty.
Who are they, Stacy? Fulgur Ventures. Who are they?
Folger Ventures are just one of the most amazing companies in this space. So they've been around for a very long time, but very humble, very quiet. They invest. They're early, the VC fund that invests in Bitcoin and Lightning. They recently just acquired, invested a lot of money in Blockstream. They invest in the Bitcoin space. They have invested a lot in El Salvador in terms of our education program, Kubo Plus, the Bitcoin and Lightning Devs program, which is a benchmark for the world. It's considered one of the best programs in the world. They're the first funder of that. So they alone, they brought in Giacomo Zucco. They just delivered for El Salvador. They built for El Salvador such an amazing achievement to put us on the world map in terms of Bitcoin education programs. And so Folger are, they're building so many things in El Salvador. They are investors in NextBridge, for example, which issued the first US Treasury bond on liquid. So that was a $30 million offering out of El Salvador. That was NextBridge. But Folger are the DaVinci sponsors, and we're talking to a few other big companies like that. We're only having a few who are just builders and just Bitcoin and just like that mindset of Medici, of Lorenzo the Magnificent, right? Where he was a rich guy, everybody knows that, but there were lots of rich guys around at that time. They all ran an Italian city-state. But none of them had what Florence had. None of them changed history to the extent that Florence did. And these are the guys that are helping to build these sort of extraordinary times. They're the ones investing in it. They're the ones inspiring others to build the best engineers, the best architects, the best explorers, right? They're the ones funding this and betting on the best, building something extraordinary. So we have them as our sponsors. The event will be, again, like an OG Bitcoin experience, where it's just fascinating conversation that inspires. We're not selling any stocks. We're not selling any paper Bitcoin. We're not pushing any corporate stuff. We're talking about what is possible, where we might go. President Bukele had said where El Salvador is going is the place we want to be, but where the world is going is the place we want to be as well. So this is what we offer, is a place to have that conversation. The date, we'll have those conversations in the afternoon on the 12th and 13th from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. So sort of evening. During the day, we'll have educational events and cultural events. So in the library, the National Library, we'll have LARPs, live action role play for in Spanish and English for people. It's a great way to learn Bitcoin if you don't know about it, because you play a part, a physical role, like you participate and you become part of the Bitcoin network. So it's a fast way to understand exactly how the Bitcoin network works. You play a node, you play a miner, you play like an ASIC, you play, you know, a lightning transaction, like, you know, so you learn how it actually functions. And, you know, Kubel Plus does these all the time. This is based on Lisa Nigut's Base 58. She's the one that kind of brought this into the Bitcoin space. We'll have these educational experiences. We'll have for the kids face painting, like as like a Bitcoin. We'll have some mural making. We have these famous graffiti artists from El Salvador who will be painting this huge mural of all these Bitcoiners. So you could participate. There'll be some parts of the mural where you could participate. There, a lot of the events will be free out in the public square. Throughout the whole Central Historico, we'll have some television screens, huge screens for the locals to watch for free, or anybody who wants to watch for free. Inside the palace, the National Palace, will be the VIP tickets because it's very, very limited space, but you'll be very close up to all the amazing speakers we have. Like Ricardo Salinas is coming, and he's just written a book about the Bitcoin Enlightenment. So, you know, he has an amazing history and such a great way of speaking and articulating this moment in history, this transformative moment in history that is the behind, like what we want to convey through the conference, which isn't really a conference. Jack Mallers will be there. He's obviously he was there from the beginning of El Salvador, and adopting Bitcoin. We'll have Jeff Booth will be there. You know, we have some big announcements coming soon about some other well-known people who will be speaking. Darren Feinstein, he's you know, Core Scientific, and which is just sold to CoreWeave for $9.2 billion. And he's a pioneer in the space, and also a huge AI investor now. So we have people like that. We have Giacomo Zucco, who is so important to what we've built in El Salvador through the education he's been doing for our, you know, teaching the next generation of builders. He's now basically taught about 500 elite students of Bitcoin and Lightning development, right? Devs. He's also going to be made our honorary consul in Lugano. So he's going to be essentially a Bitcoin ambassador. And now we also have Lena Seish.
I interviewed her earlier this week, or was it last week? Yeah, we had a chat.
Lena is the next level, the next stage of transformation of El Salvador. What she's doing for our education programs is, you know, watch the interview that she gave you with What is Money, is the first in the world, the first of its sort in the world, which is financial literacy and the history of money. We're teaching to 7-year-olds. I mean, El Salvador is just the most amazing country, the most extraordinary moment in history, and everybody should come there to see for themselves. Don't trust, verify. Come to Bitcoin Historico, bitcoinhistorico.com, and you're guaranteed a good time. You could buy a ticket, or you could just show up and enjoy the free parts of it out, you know, out during the day in the square. So there's something for everybody, and you know, learn why, be part of this story, be part of history. Like, if you don't come, you're basically like the equivalent of, like, you had an opportunity to go to Florence and hang out with Medici and Botticelli and Da Vinci and Michelangelo, and you're like, nah, I don't know, I have like, I'm watching this TV series and it's really good, and do I really want to get on a plane? And like, no, this is like, people are going to talk about this in 500 years. And they're going to wonder, like, what sort of moron decided to stay home instead and not show up and see this moment in history. Be part of it. You could do it. And Max is going to be there showing off his legs, too. Like, who doesn't want to see that?
If enthusiasm could sell tickets, this is already sold out. Stacy, tell us where can people find more information about Historico, Bitcoin Historico, and potentially buy tickets as well?
BitcoinHistorico.com. Hopefully you can post a photo online of the site.
Well, we're going to do more than that. We're gonna post this whole segment as an advertisement for Bitcoin Historico, and
Oh,
we'll put a
good,
link
good.
in there
And
as
it's
well.
the 12th and 13th of November. And, that's Bitcoin month in El Salvador. So there's a whole bunch of other stuff happening. There's adopting Bitcoin right after us. There's Bitcoin Economica up in Berlin, which is a circular economy. Max and I will also host meetups before and after at our new restaurant we have called La Cajita.
What?
Yeah, we have a restaurant. I forgot so we have a restaurant called La Cajita. It's in Bitcoin Beach, and it's super fun, beautiful, right on the ocean. It's beautiful scenery. You could see the sunrise and sunset. If you're a surfer, you show up in the morning and surf, and Bitcoiners come in the afternoon and watch the orange sunset. Max and I are going to do a meetup on the Sunday the 10th there. And if you have a VIP ticket, you'll have a guaranteed seat because it's limited seating, right? You'll have a guaranteed seat at the our meetup on Sunday the 10th, and then we're going to do one after. So we have our event, Bitcoin Historical, 12 and 13, and then the Adopting Bitcoin is 13th and 14th, or 14th and 15th. And then on the 15th, the Saturday, we will do another meetup. So we top and tail it, like the arrivals and exit, arrivals and departure for those coming to El Salvador for this Bitcoin week. So we'll have two meetups, and if you have the VIP tickets, then you have guaranteed seating at La Cajita for our meetup. But it's going to be fun. We have music. We're going to have music at Cuban jazz at the conference as well, Bitcoin Historico. It's going to be such an elegant, refined affair to mark this moment in history. That is an extraordinary moment where El Salvador has achieved greatness in a very short time and has inspired the world. It's a country that gets standing ovations wherever it goes.
Stacy, on that note, we'll wrap it up. Thank you so much for coming and joining us again on the podcast. It's always a pleasure, and I can't wait until the next time.
Thank you for having me.